The mailman doesn't deliver on a Sunday.
If you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball.
Anthony for three. Bang! J.R. Smith! We just saw men fly. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Cleveland! This is for you!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I am Ronan Gaine. Joining me as always, Chris Nambu. Thanks so much for making Coast to Coast your first listen for this NBA offseason coverage. We're going to be continuing our series of looking at some teams that got a lot of questions to answer as we head into the new season. This week, we're talking Timberwolves and Los Angeles Clippers. But before we get into it, Chris, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. Glad to get back into talking about West Coast. We have a special historical player to talk about today. But good, man. Always good to talk some ball. We're in the midst of nothing happening besides Harden, which I don't know if we want to talk about. I think that was that yesterday afternoon. So it's a little bit fresh. You want to start with that? Let's talk about this really awkward situation.
That's part of the Clippers conversation too. So we can get right into the Harden stuff. Really weird, the Harden stuff.
Super weird.
He has no interest in going back. He's not going to show up for training camp, but Philly had decided they're going to end training trade talks and bring him back. It's just I don't see where the resolution is going to come here.
Yeah, I I told you, man. I told you when they were starting the trade talks, like it was really hard for anyone to think of places that it would make sense for him to go. And then now nothing happened. There's no real traction anywhere for him to get traded, especially, you know, you'd think that someone would. I think everyone's just waiting for the Damian Lillard trade to happen. And I don't know if that would just reveal that he's like the next best option, but probably all the teams that are thinking of getting Dame, you know, maybe Harden's like their second option. So they're not going to do that until they know they can't get Dame. But man, that's just going to be like, how awkward is that for a team, a group of guys, you know, we're really just a quarter away. You're 1 quarter away from probably being in the finals last season. Like you could argue that you're that close. And then your second main guy doesn't want back, can't get his way, and now he's just going to be back. Like how do you sit in the locker room, look at that guy, or be on the court, look at that guy and like trust him that he's going to give us all, trust him that he has his best intent. Like that's not, maybe not untenable, maybe that's not the word, but it's definitely not the recipe for a team that's in a really competitive Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and it's obviously tough. It's a situation Nick Nurse is gonna have to deal with. I'd like to think that he'll be capable of doing that, but it's not a situation you really want to come into, the new head coaching job, and your second star is someone who has no interest in playing there and wants out, but no one wants to trade him away. It's going to be tough. One thing I will look at, hopefully a positive thing that comes out of it, I think Tyrese Maxey should be looking at this situation just saying, I'm going to show everyone that we don't really need Harden here, and I can absolutely come and fill his shoes. So I hope that can be an impact that comes off of this. But the situation as a whole, very strange. Like you said, maybe it's the whole thing with Dame, and then when that finally goes down, maybe we'll get a move then for Harden. But you even like you said, it's just so hard to find it. Really think of a team where this is actually a really good fit for him. Like they could actually offer a somewhat decent package to Philly. Like there really isn't that situation around. Like I'm seeing like the Knicks have been one of the teams being touted to go for Harden. Like why would we go for James Harden? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I think that it is a big problem that there isn't really any place where you're like, oh, he'd be a great fit there. They have the assets to offer a decent package for him. I don't see any sort of dream fit for him around the league.
Yeah, there's no space for Harden on the Knicks in the future, especially when you're going to get Donovan Mitchell there eventually, right? So, but yeah, let's jump into the Clippers, who I thought, you know, maybe that fit makes sense. Maybe that's where, you know, his abilities as a playmaker would really benefit them, and I think that's the biggest thing you look at with this team. I mean, Russ was pretty much the only guy who is like a main playmaker on this team. You know, in John Wall, I mean that's not the guy that you wanted to be leading you into a championship. Unfortunately, it's sad to see that was there's such a slim chance that it worked out for him when he went to Houston, and then like maybe there's a redemption there in Los Angeles, but you can just tell like it's not in the cards for him anymore. But they definitely need a guy who can stir the drink, who can get a lot of the shooters that they had on this team, get them going. And who else? Who else but Harden in terms of a playmaker star? And he was willing to go there. But that's my question for them now. So who's going to make everything work out here? Because you want to answer Kawhi, because that's the obvious answer. But you'd never know if he's going to be healthy. Is that our? Should we get that dumb question out of the way first? Because that's a question that everyone has to ask.
I mean, like the main questions I have when I think of the Clippers, obviously last year, they lost first round. Kawhi obviously in and out of the team, didn't really play much of the regular season. Then looks like a superstar, but unfortunately goes down in the second game. Paul George was out of the playoffs. They lose in the first round, and now you're looking like they need to make additions, but they have such a lack of assets. Where can they really go with this team from here? And like you look at it and say, should they add James Harden? Can this team still win? Do they have enough to win without Paul George and Kawhi being at 100% full tilt? I'll go. Those are kind of the main questions that I look at. I mean, I know everyone talks about it, but it is shocking with George and Kawhi. Like they went all in on those two guys, and neither of them have ever played more than 60 regular season games the whole time they've been in Los Angeles. Last year, 56 games for George out of the playoffs. Kawhi plays 52 games. It's just not tenable. The regular season is important. It's not a thing that you can just take. You can be injured all the regular season, then just come in the playoffs and easy win, lead the team to the playoffs, win, no problem. Or you can be in and out of the team like by choice and not really take the regular season seriously, and then just think, by the playoffs we'll be grand. It just doesn't work that way, and the Clippers are just a testament to that.
I have an honest question about even the health thing. So, well, if you answer that, and it's like, okay, this is year they finally are healthy, they finally are both able to play 55 games and not be majorly injured by the playoffs. I'm going to list off some teams and tell me like full health, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard's healthy. Are they better than the Pelicans?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Are they better than the TWolves?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Easy. Kings?
Yeah.
Mavs?
I want to say no, but probably yeah.
Should be, right? And that's where it starts to get okay. Like we're kind of there. Grizzlies. Jaws back by that time when it matters.
You probably give the Clippers just a little bit of edge.
Yeah. And I'm talking fully healthy Kawhi, fully healthy Paul George.
Mm-hmm.
Like if that magically somehow happens. All right. Lakers.
I mean, they usually get the better of them. We still haven't got to see that series. Maybe this will be the year, but the Clippers usually get the better of them. So maybe you got to say, yeah, there.
Think of Lakers and Clippers. You would take right now a healthy Kawhi, Paul George duo with their small ball lineups over Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves, who is now, according to 2K, an 86, which basically makes him an all-star. So,
nah, screw it. I'll take the Lakers. The Lakers got to the Western Conference Finals last year.
It's close. It's definitely close. Now, what about the Warriors?
I take them over the Warriors as much as you believe in Steph, and I probably take Steph over the two of those guys. I think on the whole, I probably would take them over the Warriors.
That would be an interesting matchup there, and that is where it's also like I feel like there's a lot of that's where it gets to the chess match. If you get those two teams in a 7-game series, you're not sure, whether the Clippers size and they have like ultra big small ball compared to Warriors, but then again, like you don't know that's a close matchup. And then the Nuggets, I think, is the only team here that Nuggets and Suns. For me, I feel confident. I'm definitely taking Nuggets and Suns over Clippers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's fully healthy. That's in the mix just off of a quick, just side-by-side comparison. That should be like a 4th, 5th seed. with him fully healthy. Now one of them goes down. I think they still end up in the same range where they are in the 7th seed. Now that just seems to be like where I just wanted to like talk about like where do we see them at their baseline? Best case, worst case. Worst case, obviously both of them are injured, and then they're, this is a non-conversation. They're better teams here. T-Wolves are better than them with just Kawhi, right? Or just Paul George. I'm taking every single one of these teams over the Clippers if they do not have both. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Maybe not the Pelicans because Zion will probably be
No?
injured too. So
Well, fair. A fully healthy Pelicans, like, again, this is a bunch of ifs, but I mean that has to happen, and you're right. I mean they'd have to play, together, hopefully 50, 55 games. They're not. I don't think if they're hitting 60 games like that, that's a sign to me that things are really looking up. They're playing 60 games. But I think a better marker is like if they're getting rested, playing 55 games or so, just under 60. And then that's probably when they're at their best, 5th seed or so. But if they're not, who else on this team do you look at that could improve, or where can growth come from the roster from within? Do you see anything?
not really. That's where it kind of makes sense to possibly add a guy like Harden, because you think he could probably still carry that roster through a couple of regular season games, get them a few wins, even if like Kawhi and PG weren't there, and then he could be that place setter, that playmaker for them as well. So that in that sort of scenario, that's where like the addition of a guy like Harden probably would be a decent move for the Clippers. But yeah, it's outside of that, I'm like, yeah, Russ can probably still have an impact off as a bench player out there. I hope he's able to do that. But outside of that, I'm kind of like, what does this team really have? Like they're kind of really locked in on their elite level stars, and then that's kind of it really.
Does KJ Martin do anything for you?
Not really, no.
I'm intrigued. I think that's a level of athlete that they don't have outside of Norman Powell. And I think he's definitely a lot better defensively. He's going to try a lot harder there. And I think that for me is interesting in terms of like where the minutes are going to come from. Because I think they're pretty excited about getting in a younger player like him to see what he's got, see if he can take a step forward. The shooting is definitely not where it needs to be for him to be playing next to Paul George and Kawhi right now. He shot 31.5% from three. I think that's a lot. That's something that no one's talking about right now. Well, obviously, no one's really talking about KJ Martin to begin with, but KJ Martin as an addition to this team, I think is really intriguing to get a young wing that is great rebounder, great in open space, is really going to pick up the pace of this Clippers team that likes to play a little bit slow. And you get guys like that next to guys like Bones, just trying to like switch things up and how this team plays, and that could be important. But he needs to learn how to shoot. But I wonder if he can take minutes from Norman Powell. Because Norman Powell's not. I mean, he's had a tough season, even though he's averaging 17 points a game for them. I mean, his efficiency has just like really started to fall off. And especially when you expect him to do it at volume and consistency, he's not really put together the kind of player that you hoped he would be. Because when they got him, I thought that was their guy. That was guy number 3. So I'm curious where KJ Martin fits in that. Does Norman Powell is he a piece that other teams might be interested in, given that he hasn't really brought out the full potential of this team?
Yeah, he could be an asset there, but you think he could possibly be someone who's included in a package if they were to make a move for Harden? I'd say there's a possibility that he'd be one of the names in there. Like they're gonna have to give up some sort of assets. They don't exactly have an abundance of picks to be giving out because they owe all of those to OKC. So he could be someone that you could see possibly moving if they were to try and add Harden. But yeah, I think there's definitely the opportunity there for a guy like him to kind of see less minutes. I think that's definitely on the cards, but also you're going to need to see that growth quite early and in a big way from a guy like Martin or even like a Bones Highland to see like he wanted out of Denver, but let's see what he can do now for his career. Like what sort of player is he going to actually be in this NBA? Is he going to be a an impactful role player, or is he just going to end up being a nothing who gets bounced around a few teams and is out of the league in a couple of years?
Yeah, you're a Bones guy. I'd say I'm still a Bones guy.
Yeah, I still have belief there. I still like to think that he could have a good impact.
Yeah, I have
Maybe,
not sold my Bone stock.
no,
I'm still
no.
holding on to my Bone stock.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe I'm not gonna go screaming from the rooftops, but I still have it. I still have it in the back pocket, of course. I'm not gonna sign off on him just yet. So even on the whole, then would you say either you fully healthy, like you said, that scenario, like you said, they're healthy, they play 55 games, and outside that, it's just actual rest, not just injuries. They're good to go come playoffs. You believe that this Clippers team, as currently constructed, can still win?
I think it'll take something special. And I think one thing you see from championship teams is, like what is what is the thing that gets them going this season? And they have to find identities, and this is something they struggle with, find identities that work with Kawhi and Paul George, even though Kawhi and Paul George aren't on the floor. And if they can, and this isn't a long shot, and this is an all or nothing, could be nothing, but guys like KJ, guys like Bones, guys that you're not really expecting to be major contributors, if they can add something to this team, they need new life on this team. Honestly, like it's getting stale. Most of their players have been here for a while. I mean, you already just had Eric Gordon jump ship to the Suns, which I think it's a bigger loss than you think. I mean, he
Yeah.
would have provided such a steady presence at the two guard, and that now you're going to have to fill with Norman Powell, who I still don't think is as good of a defensive player, but there's just a lot of things on the margins that still I think need to be seen. I mean, the Clippers are going to be competitive, and this is a long-winded way of saying, like, I am not confident in looking at them as a championship team without the health. And I think I would feel a little bit more confident if you had some spectacular growth from a couple of their up and coming guys, because I mean, you saw that from Austin Reeves, and I don't think that's necessarily an exceptional case. I mean, you look at the Grizzlies when they had growth from some of their young guys out of nowhere, even though they were marginal and they were, as one player, maybe not the craziest improvement. They're not winning most improved, but guys on teams like the Grizzlies, when they get better, the team gets better as a whole, that they raise the sales.
Yeah.
And if they can get that from those two guys, if they can continue to get even just 70% of Russ Westbrook,
Yeah.
if Westbrook is still playing at that physicality, at that level, and you're getting enough from maybe Bones to mix things up a bit, it just seems like a long shot for all these things to add enough to a team like the Clippers to make me want to pick them over the Lakers. And I think the Lakers, surprisingly, right now, if you asked me this last year, I would not have said this, but the Lakers have a formula now. That makes sense. The Suns, the Kings, the Nuggets, even the Grizzlies, all these other teams have formulas that make sense, that they've added to, that they haven't shifted too much, but the Clippers just have not had the chance to do it consistently enough to the point where anyone right now can confidently say that they're a championship level team. I think they're a sub contender until proven otherwise.
Yeah, I think you're dead right there. I think obviously like the all the pieces are there. Like they got a great coach in Ty Lue. They've got the great stars, but you don't know what the formula really is. You don't really know how you're going to play. So you're basically, like you said, I think sub contenders, and maybe if we actually get to see the health, then maybe you're like, oh, okay, maybe they're a contender now. But until we see the health, until we actually see it before our eyes, I don't think there's any way you could really get behind them being a team that should be considered a title contender going into the new year.
Yeah, health in March. That's the thing. The asterisk, and I'll end on that is they need to be healthy in March, and it can't be the opposite either. If they're a team that's all of a sudden adding back in Kawhi and Paul George in March, they haven't played in like 3 months, that they have basically had the same experience as these other teams, like the Suns, that have added a star and have to figure it all out, adding us like that. Such a major change, but I hope it works out, because I mean, obviously that was supposed to be the fun battle of LA. We were supposed to see Lakers Clippers go at it for 3, 4, 5 years, and hasn't happened yet. So hopefully
That's how
things do work out.
we at least get the playoff series this year. Come on, time's almost running out, but we won't get into that. And we'll switch over and we'll talk a bit of Minnesota Timberwolves. I mean, look what they did last year. They traded a huge haul to bring in Rudy Gobert. It felt like they were solving a ginormous problem in their team, a ginormous hole in their team that was very evident in the playoffs the previous season against the Grizzlies. And somehow their team looked worse. Their record got worse, and they were eliminated the first round of the playoffs. So now you're looking at it and you're thinking, should they maybe trade off Cat, bring back some of the assets that they lost when they traded Gobert? Is Anthony Edwards the man? Do they believe in him as being the superstar to lead this team? And can they actually still succeed as currently constructed, or do they have to make a switch there? That's how I look at that when I'm thinking about the Minnesota Timberwolves.
That major thing, I think the direction will become very clear, I think, from Anthony Edwards. And I'm paying attention. I'm honestly not watching the games yet until maybe it gets a little further on. But what Anthony Edwards does for Team USA, I think, is very important. Very important for him as a player. It's very important for him to show, like, has he entered that next level as not just a veteran, but like a leader? Like, has he developed that? And that is going to be the most important part to it. Because I think he said a lot of really mature things with this past year. He could have been a lot more toxic, I think, about the way that things have gone. Mm-hmm. And I think that everything has been swirling around the Timberwolves have been so negative. It's just been about Cat not playing up to standard, about the Gobert trade, about how they're not good enough and how things on the floor aren't working. But I think that Ant has been surprisingly, like, really positive through all this. And you don't always see that from your young player. And maybe he's just the positive guy in the room. And that's it. But I think that he's shown to at least not be detracting from the team. And his leadership in Team USA, if he can bring that back to Timberwolves, if he can really prove to be like, I'm the guy, make everything work around me in a non-selfish way and like leading by example, especially like with his strides in defense. It still has a lot of work to go, but the improvements he did make last season when he was engaged, when he was active, like that was a two-way. That was a guy on offense, like everyone needs to pay attention to him. That was a guy that in short spurts on defense, he was stopping the other team's best player. Like when I look at Anthony Edwards, I mean, when you just look at top 10 players in the league, like obviously I'm not going to say Ant's going to be a top 10 player, but with LeBron on the way out, like with, KD getting older, Harden's obviously not there anymore. Russ isn't there anymore. Giannis isn't going anywhere. But I mean, there's a place for Ant in this league to be considered like the best.
Oh, 100%. I fully believe he can be a top 5 player within the next 3 years, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it's crazy to say. I don't think that's crazy to say. And I think none of this matters. Literally none of this matters if the light bulb moment happens, whether that's Team USA or whatever, and all the little things come together with his shot selection, with his paying attention on defense, with his reads on pick and rolls, with his reads as a passer in pick and rolls. Just all these little things. If they really start to come together and things click, like that's when you have a big jump here. And that's if Anthony Edwards is a top 8, top 10 player, whatever. If he has reached that point, who cares if Karl Anthony Towns isn't playing well enough? Who cares if Rudy Gobert can't catch a basketball within 3 feet? Yeah, I mean, we still care. But that will matter so much less just based on his greatness. If he is truly that great, then it's just about working the margins. And I think, the T-Wolves are good enough as a dysfunctional team to make the playoffs. And, I don't think they were just saying this, but I mean, the Nuggets have admitted, and it was pretty evident on the floor too, that, so a lot of those stretches against the T-Wolves are some of the hardest basketball that they had to play.
Yeah.
And again, the Timberwolves did that against the Grizzlies too, a couple years back when the Grizzlies were almost there. That the Grizzlies were almost there to beat the Warriors. They would have been there against the Celtics if Ja doesn't go down. And just I think if you looked at that contest, I think the Timberwolves would have given them similar problems. So I think that really it's all about Ant. They can't fix this, man. The asset situation, that they're in such a hole.
Mhm.
If a trade magically came along where you could get it back, I just don't think that you would get back. I don't know how much addition by subtraction you would get by getting Cat out of there. You might. I don't know. I mean, just looking defensively, it was really tough. I mean, the Cat's just not, and this is so obvious when the trade is made. He's just not able to stay in front of smaller fours.
Mhm.
He's not able to make quick reads to get back and help. Like he's not a good weak side rim protector. And when you got two guys out there, it's not easy. So I don't know. Do you really think that 1 year showed that they can't make it work? Is that impossible?
Yeah, that's the thing, is like you probably need to give it a bit more time, and you're probably in a position where you're able to give it a bit more time because Ant isn't yet at the level where you're like, okay, it's win now. We have to do what's best for him right at this very moment. So I think there's time there to give it maybe another year, maybe even another half a year, and then maybe look at it from there. But the only thinking from my end is that you think about the way they looked last year, you think that his Cat's value isn't going to go up playing in
Yeah.
this current team. I think it could stay the same, but I think it's more likely that his value goes down if it continues to be this like dysfunctional, doesn't bad fit, because he's not going to look at his best. Gobert's not going to look his best, and then the team as a whole is probably going to struggle. But like you said, if about Ant, like if he becomes that guy, that's not going to matter as much. But in terms of building the best team around Ant when he is that dude, maybe they're gonna have to make a move because it. I hope I'm proven wrong because I love to see Ant and Cat be the two guys leading this Timberwolves team into consistent playoff success. But looking at it last year, it just doesn't feel like it's gonna fit, and I don't see them. They're not gonna move off of Gobert because they're not gonna get anything close to back to what they traded for him. So I think the value guy is Karl Anthony Towns. But like you said, it's like what sort of assets will they really get back? What sort of starting level players are they going to get back in any trade for Cat? That's something I'd have to delve into a bit more and do a bit more research on.
I this is super random, and this is just entertain this thought for a second. But like guys like Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, Kelly Oubre, Terry Rozier, just those names there. Maybe not the most exciting in the world to see as a return for Karl Anthony Towns. But I mean, you just look at teams that are kind of in random places right now. Like the Hornets are in a weird place, the Bulls are in a weird place. There's teams in the Eastern Conference that like are just kind of like not sure what they're doing. And adding an all-star, one of the best shooting bigs in NBA history, and maybe that those are teams that are interested in doing something like that. And if you can get back really good offensive wings, two-way wings, more mobile bigs. I mean, having guys that can play alongside Gobert, that can amplify what Gobert does instead of taking away from that is major addition by subtraction. Because that my thing about last year, and just thinking about it more now that we're talking about it, about how much time you need to know whether or not Cat and Gobert work together. I think it's already been decided because the best that you ever saw when you put together two guys consistently, when you put together five guys consistently, like can you see are there games where you can go back and be like, you know what, maybe you didn't do it throughout the whole season, but in that game you figured it out and something clicked, and like that was such an unstoppable twin tower moment. Like no one could score at the rim, and then Cat's like dropping bombs while Gobert's catching lobs. But there's never any traction. There's never any real synergy. And like its best was like mediocre.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what you have Gobert. That should be a top 10 defense with Gobert, but it's not. And we've seen what happens with Gobert when you're not having him be a defensive anchor, when he gets kind of switched out on, and when he gets into too much recovery on defense, when there's just too much motion going on, and it's not like plainly set up where Gobert's defending the rim, everything's getting funneled to him, he can play drop defense instead of all these schemes that they have to do to keep Cat out there, then you're just not getting the best out of either of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if this has already been rehashed here, but I think, thinking about it again, there seems to be no reason why these two should be together long term. And again, Miles Bridges, maybe not exciting. PJ Washington, maybe not super exciting, but those are great players. Those are great two-way players. And again, if Ant is going to be a borderline top 10 player, he's cementing himself as a top 10 player, period. Just getting guys who are going to fit their roles and play them well and getting the best out of a defensive hub like Gobert. I mean, that is a recipe there for a contending level team, not what this little experiment they have here right now.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, it's the star chasing league. Like you see the moves that other teams in the West are making, and maybe then you're in the Timberwolves position, you're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't trade off a cap because we need that second star to play with Ant. Like Ant can be that elite level player that can drive up the production of the role players around him. And I fully believe he's going to get to that level. I've believed in him since he was drafted by the Timberwolves. So I fully believe he's going to get to that level. So as long as they've got athletic two-way wings, a defensive stopper like Gobert, like a playmaker like Conley playing alongside Anthony Edwards, you don't need to have that star, two star beside Ant, because he's going to be that good alone, and he's going to elevate the level of the players around him. So the focus for me for the Timberwolves is all about how can they get the best out of Ant, how can they build the best team around Anthony Edwards, and that's where I think that maybe it's time to move on from Cat. It'd be a big decision. They'd have to really analyze the market and try and get a really decent package for him. But there definitely is enough of a market, and they could definitely get in, I'd say, a first round pick or two, and a couple of very decent role players from more than two or three teams. I think would be interested in adding a guy like Cat and could provide a pretty decent package for them.
Yeah. Any players on this team, whether they're acquired in this offseason or anyone that no one's really thinking about, that intrigue you on this team that could maybe make things a little different?
I mean, like the main story for the Timberwolves offseason was Ant changing his number. So, I mean, there's not too much there. I mean, like if Shake Milton, could he be a nice addition as a role player? Possibly. But outside of that, you're like, yeah, I was happy Nasir got paid. That was cool. Then you're looking at like a few other guys, and you're thinking like, is it that much to get excited about? Not really, but I don't know. Have you got anyone on your mind when you ask the question?
Well, two, I think there's the obvious one is Jaden McDaniels. Played 79 games and went from 32% from three last year to 39, basically they're 40% 3-point shooter. And a guy who's absolute ball stopper, superstar defensive player. I think he should be an all defensive player next year. I mean, that guy, if he continues to add to his game, averaged 12.1 points this year, averaged 9.2 the year before that, got his free throw rate up. But he, I think, has shown a little bit more putting the ball on the floor, being a better catch and shoot guy, being more confident there, that if he can turn things up as well at his age, I would not be surprised if he's like maybe not a borderline all-star, but if he goes into being like a top 40 player, he has that two-way potential. I mean, defensively, like he's, I mean, top 10, top 20 player right now, depending on who you ask. And a random guy, this can be all or nothing, but this is someone that I've always been interested in just because of his size and like his playmaking and, his shooting potential. I mean, it hasn't come together, but Nickeil Alexander-Walker has bounced around a little bit. And I'm really curious if he can get a chance here, because he's shown flashes. Like whenever he gets minutes, like he'll really make the most of them, but he just does not get time. And obviously, there's a lot of things that come down to how crowded it was with the Pelicans, how crowded it was in Utah. And here with the Timberwolves, who does he have? He's got J-Mac, Austin Rivers. I mean, who else? Shake Milton's more of a two, playing NAW at the one. But he's somebody that, we're talking about guys you acquire in the offseason, you take a chance, and sometimes those chances ended up working out. So I'm curious if he's somebody that can come out of nowhere, a reclamation project who can be a solid rotation guy for the Timberwolves. Is that all or nothing?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
definitely an all or nothing
probably
sort of
nothing.
situation, but it's not. Let's be real. It's probably nothing, but there's still enough optimism there that it could still be something. So it's definitely not something to completely
Yeah.
shut down. But yeah, looking ahead, it's gonna be interesting. I think I like what you're saying about Ant. It's gonna be interesting to see what he's like with Team USA. That's definitely gonna be interesting to watch and see what level he comes back at and see what the Timberwolves do from here. But it could be there's a big season ahead for Minnesota. It could be a very bright and successful one with Ant kind of taking that another leap. He's always shown the steady growth, and maybe in some crazy realm they find a way to make it work. Maybe they trade off Cat and it looks a whole lot better. But questions definitely to be answered from Minnesota. But stop speaking of the future. Let's go back to the past. Let's head over to the throwback corner and talk about a guy who I believe does not get enough recognition as one of the greatest of all time. The face of Boston basketball, Larry Bird. His greatness does not get talked about enough. You hear all the talk about players giving their top tens, the best of all time, and you very rarely hear Larry Bird's name get mentioned, but this guy was an absolute monster. One of the greatest ever for me, and a guy that was the face of the league, saved the league along with Magic Johnson back in the 80s.
Where does he the interesting thing about Bird is that he's a guy that does not fit the like for our generation, like our idea of what a superstar is. Um, he's not athletic, straight up. Look back, like that was not his strong suit. He was not dunking over anybody, he was not finishing over anybody. He was at times missing layups, but I think his skill level though is something that you can't really appreciate until you look back and you watch some games. You look back and you see the kind of players he's dominating, and you realize that in the 80s, second to Magic Johnson, that was like the best playmaker in the league, one of the best offensive rebounders in the league, the best shooter in the league, and like just the what he could have done, I think, in this era with the spaced out floor. I think that's a crazy thing. Like when we have to go back and talk about these players and look at 80s basketball, like it is just so congested, man. It's like how I don't understand how anyone scored back then, except back to the basket. A lot of grungy offensive rebounding. That's why he had two bigs at the same time. But I think when you rank him, where do you put him in terms of like offensive players? So I see he's like top five easily.
Oh, 100%. His IQ was off the charts. That he was a genius of a player, and you think about the level of IQ he had to have as a guy who wasn't dominating athletically, and like you saw that on the court, the passes, the reads, the shooting ability that he had as well. He was next level. Like I for what he did for the league and the ability that he has. Obviously, I wasn't watching him live when he was playing, but when you look back and you watch the tape and you hear the way he's talked about, he for me he's on my Mount Rushmore. He's in my top five all time. I really believe he was one of the greatest of all time, and maybe it's forgotten about because of like the last few years were quite injury ridden. He didn't really have that longevity, but over his 13 years in the league, like he was a monster. Everyone knew Larry Bird. Everyone feared Larry Bird, and rightfully so. I mean, you list off the things he did it all. 3-time MVP, 3-time champ, 2-time Finals MVP, only player in NBA history to average 24, 10, and 6. Created the 50-40-90 club. Career averages of 51, 38, and 88. And like two of the GOAT nicknames of all time. I mean, Larry Legend and the Hick from French Lick. Top tier nicknames right there. This guy was unbelievable.
I think we were talking about trying to think about players in today's period, just for people to kind of get a sense of like put into context like how good some of these historical players were, especially because the context of basketball is different in terms of like what the strategy was, what the physicality whether it was different or not. The athleticism was definitely different, and I think it's a weird and maybe a pedestrian comparison, but his finishing around the rim is what's insane. I mean, a 6'9" forward, but getting messy with 7-footers with the physicality in the 80s too. I mean, there's a reason why he broke down. I mean, this guy was a max hustle player, and that's something like first and foremost that I wanted to point out when watching Larry Bird. You don't always see that level of like dogged mentality, like just going after every loose ball. Like there's so many highlights of him diving after a loose ball and getting an assist right after, like be on the ground, getting an assist, getting thrown down because he's getting into position for offensive rebounds. And like that level of hustle for your best player, that is so impressive. You don't see that with like 90% of stars out there. They just don't do that sort of thing, saving their body. But I think when you look at how he finished around the rim, it's fascinating to kind of compare him to Jokic a little bit, just in terms of like his post play and his footwork was so perfect. And it's like he always knew the counter. He always knew, and that came from one thing that was very special about watching the tape is how quickly you get a shot off. As soon as that ball is in his hands, he could just rise up and shoot. Immediately rise up and shoot. Almost like, I think we were talking about comparing them to different players, right? Like Klay Thompson, the way that the ball hits Klay Thompson's hands and he's already in shooting motion, it was like the same thing. You'd see Larry Bird be in the post, and as soon as the ball is his way, his feet are already turning, getting his shoulder squared, and he's shooting right over that guy. Mm-hmm. And then he would turn that almost like Jokic would know, someone's coming right from his left side. As soon as he gets the ball, he's spinning right. And like drop step right. Immediately knows. And like the quick moves, just that IQ that he had to counter everything, that started from him being a really, really adept shooter. Just the second the ball touched his hand was amazing. And then those Jokic like floaters around the rim, those very like that's when we compare athleticism, right? Like if you just watch highlights of Larry Bird like shooting little floaters over guys within 4 feet, that's not like, oh my God, that's a top 10 player ever. Like look at him dominating everybody, but he would do that all game. Mm-hmm. He would never get tired of that. He would do that to everybody. And he was smart enough to counter everything that other teams had for him. And it's almost like when I think 10, 15 years from now, if people look back and just watch a clip of Jokic, unless it's passes, like they'll be like, why was this guy back-to-back MVP? Mm-hmm. What are we seeing here? But it's that consistent knowing how to play chess, knowing how to like out IQ everybody on the floor, not just with the shooting, but the passing too. That really opened my eyes to watch that consistently and think about the players in the league today and like the combination of shooting and playmaking and rebounding and all that. He was just an amazing all-around player.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like you think about it, like think of like his like greatest qualities probably is IQ, his scoring and shooting ability, and then kind of like the grit and determination side as well. Like you think like he was a match for LeBron James in terms of level of IQ.
Oh yeah.
Like 100%. And like that, like LeBron's the guy that everyone always talks about, like his IQ is off the charts. Larry Bird was the exact same way. And then in terms of like the scoring, the 3-level scoring for like a big guy, like he's like, he'd be doing what like Kevin Durant does now. I fully believe if he was playing in the league today and it was more the way Boston played back in the day, if they like allowed him to be in position to shoot more 3-pointers and things like that, I fully believe he would have been doing similar things to what Kevin Durant does as a 3-level scorer. And then you think like the obviously like the arrogance he had, the trash talking, everything, like the amount of guys, the stories you hear, like he literally would tell you, this is exactly what I'm gonna do, but you won't be able to stop it. and he just goes and do it. No problem. Like, and the story with like playing the game left-handed because he was saving his right hand for the Lakers, and what did he scored like nearly 50 points and like half of them with his left hand. Like this guy had unbelievable confidence, unbelievable arrogance, and just all around just great ability. He was in a different class to a lot of people, and it needs to be talked about more. People need to listen to this now. Go back and watch some Larry Bird highlights, and you will realize what a talented player this guy was. Do you think it's crazy to think about, like, if you, like,
like if you were to try to explain to someone who watched today and not know or have seen anything about Larry Bird, I feel like watching the kind of passes he makes, I maybe again I said this is low hanging fruit, but Luka Doncic, the way Luka like predicts passing lanes, predicts the the third action
You only
off
going
of
to
a
compare
play.
him to white guys?
No, I know. And when I was thinking about it, I was like, this is not what I'm trying to do. But the way that Luka sees the floor from his height, and the way that Jokic does with his height too, I think that's a big difference because Larry Bird as a post playmaker with his height could do so much more than a regular point guard could. And I think if you just compare those two guys and just imagined if Luka was a two-time all defensive player, and if Luka was a top 5 like offensive rebounder for his position, like great rebounder but offensive rebounder, like you saw Larry Bird like getting down and dirty in the paint with 7-footers in the 80s, like that's that kind of energy that he had. And I think that should put into perspective for anyone who watches mostly modern NBA and doesn't know that, including myself, honestly, that's another echelon of player. Because we put Luka on a big pedestal because he's like, oh, that's easily top 5 player in our league of our generation, top 5 player of our generation. But like he's missing so many attributes that Larry Legend had. And for two guys that are wing playmakers, not because they're whites, but they're wing playmakers, he's just miles ahead. And I think that just goes to show for me too that for a guy I'm a huge fan of, Luka has a long way to go to become a legendary all-time player. And just because he came in as Luka Legend, he did not earn the right to be called Luka Legend, because there is only one legend. It's Larry Legend, and he hasn't earned that yet. Defensively, on the boards, what he did in the finals, what he did in the playoffs. Obviously, I will say, Kevin McHale was the best scorers of his generation, and he was arguably top 2, top 3 scorers in certain years in the 80s. So I mean, Larry had help, and he had a great defense around him too. Like that team was very good, very good. So if the Mavs got to get something together to compare the two, but I mean, same thing. Jokic has a team around him that's perfect, and look how well he's done. So, but just to add perspective to it, I think it's when you try to make those comparisons, it's really hard to, because there are very few complete players, and then you have to just look over to the easy one, LeBron. LeBron's a complete player. Larry was a complete player.
Yeah, that's definitely the big thing, and that's why like I only kind of got into watching when I'm watching some like 30 for 30s and old documentaries, and I kind of see the way he plays. And even I remember my parents, I talk about it, they weren't even that big into basketball, but like you knew about Larry Bird, you knew that the Lakers were playing the Celtics. You always knew that when you were living in America in the 80s, when that was happening, and that was just such a huge thing. And he's not given enough credit, because he's not a guy that's freaking always having to talk. He's happy in his retirement. And also another credit to him, he's a guy that could do it all. Only guy in ever to win MVP, Coach of the Year, and Executive of the Year.
Yeah,
like,
true.
He's obviously a very intelligent man, so he's been able to do it all. Obviously, never won the chip as a coach, but he led that Indiana team and really pushed the Michael Jordan Bulls to the edge. So this is an all around NBA man. He knows what's up, and one of the greatest of all time. And I'm glad we got to talk on him, because he's someone I don't think that gets enough recognition in these modern times.
Absolutely. Now we got to talk about the opposite, right?
Yeah, we're going the complete other way now, and we're going over to a little draft, and we're only allowed to draft players who were draft flops. Some of the top picks all time that crashed and burned in the NBA. And fortunately, there's a lot of names to choose from, but you definitely know them. You'll remember a few of these anyway.
Yeah. So to clarify, we will be picking teams for each other. So last week, I'm pretty sure I still won that draft, our all-time draft. And this week we'll be seeing who can draft the worst team for the other. So who's I think I started out last time. So I'm gonna give you the first pick of all-time busts. Who are we going with your first pick?
For you, I'll give you a classic that a lot of people will remember. The great Anthony Bennett, the number
Ah,
one overall
too
pick
predictable.
in 2013 by the Cleveland Cavaliers. They got it so right with Kyrie, and then 2 years later they got it so very wrong with Anthony Bennett.
That I think that has to be like the one that everybody remembers this generation. That was the most obvious one. And I think that one was interesting too, because that it wasn't a surprise to anybody. It was like that guy was not, they overthought it. They tried to 200 IQ it and take a guy that they thought was going to make a major move here in the NBA. But honestly, it doesn't make sense to me. I thought, watching him, you watch some summer league from him, you're like, oh, this guy can play. He's kind of a tweener. You put the ball on the floor. He's athletic. He's big. Maybe he's like he almost looks like a skilled, less athletic Zion Williamson. But yeah, that didn't go anywhere. All right, that was easy first pick. Easy first pick. I'm gonna go with the greatest bust ever in this generation, Johnny Flynn. For context, Timberwolves take Ricky Rubio. Still have a chance to draft Steph. Then they take Johnny Flynn, 2 top 10 picks. They take 2 guards before Steph Curry, Johnny Flynn. No idea where he is now. That is your starting point guard, Ronan. How you feel about that?
Yeah, that's not great for me. When a guy gets drafted highly, and you look at it, it's obviously the big thing of who he got drafted before. When you look back now, and it's also the fact that he is also well out of the league. I couldn't tell you how quickly he even went out of the league, but he definitely didn't. He definitely didn't last too long. I'm not overly excited about having him in my team. I could be in trouble here, but for you, I'll go for another legendary man, and he's very legendary mainly because of who he got picked ahead of. But for you, a forward/center, Greg Oden, the number 1 pick,
Oh, that's not
2007,
fair.
picked over Kevin Durant, only ended up playing 105 games in the league. I mean, at the end of the day, he was the number 1 pick. There's expectations when you're a number 1 pick, and he did not fulfill them in any way, shape, or form.
See, here's my thing with Greg Oden. I'm glad you put him on a team because I believe that Greg Oden doesn't count as a bust. This
Okay,
man was injured. He's just injured. If he just had
that's a
the
bust.
body for it. Those ones are tough to see guys who should have been great, and their body would just not agree with them. There's so many examples of that, but I think he's the ultimate example of that. So, all right, you're really going after the injury cases already. It's kind of cheap. I'll give you a better one. If we're going for forwards, centers, I'm going with the guy who was supposed to be the next Dirk Nowitzki because he's a 7-footer. He's from Europe, and he was selected over Melo. He was selected over Wade. He was selected over Chris Bosh. I'm giving you Darko Milicic.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Yep. We see
Yeah,
that.
that's not surprising.
It's classic. That's classic. And we kind of did that again with when we got Luka, and now every time there's like a wing coming in from Europe, coming in from a Euro League or a Turkish league. Hey, that might be the next guy. That might be the next Luka. But Darko was not the next Dirk.
Yeah, it's changed now, but there was a good 10-year period where it was literally like every big guy from Europe. Oh, this guy's gonna be the next Dirk. This guy's gonna be the next Dirk. And like, it's almost doing a disservice to how great
Yeah,
Dirk
seriously.
Nowitzki was. Like, he was an unbelievable talent. Like, not every player is gonna be Dirk Nowitzki because he was a generational talent and one of the greatest Dallas Mavericks of all time. So yeah, the who he got picked ahead of, the expectations that were on him, and the way it ended up for him. Yeah, that's not great for me. I'm gonna be generous with my next pick for you. This is probably gonna be a guy that you like, but another sad case that got drafted very high and is already out of the league at 28 years old. Jabari Parker, number
Ah,
2 pick
that's
back in
sad.
2014. He had a couple of years where you're like, oh, maybe there is something here, but it just never fully clicked, and it was one or two, probably second, third year. He kind of had nice averages, but still didn't play that many games, and then slowly but surely he bounced around a few teams, and then he was gone.
My player compares for that. If Jabari Parker does not tear both ACLs, Jabari Parker is as good, if not better, than Julius Randle. That's the kind of player he would have been. That's who he should have been. He should have been a better version of Julius because he had handles. He could put the ball on the floor a little better than Randle could. More natural shooting touch than Randle. And he had that same size, same ability to get in the paint. That's that that's sad. You keep picking sad cases, man. I'm trying to make you regret. You're just making me sad here. But let me give you a big regret. I'm gonna give you Michael Kidd Gilchrist. And maybe some people won't say he's a bust. Maybe.
Yeah.
Great defensive player, sure. But at second pick, he was taken before Brad Beal, Damian Lillard, Barnes, Drummond. I think that in terms of team regret, which is Johnny Flynn, Darko Milicic, I know that MKG will fit in there quite nicely. A guy who just could not play offense when he was drafted, had no shot at all, zero, perspective to become an offensive player. I don't know what Charlotte was thinking taking him number 2.
Yeah, that's just the story of Charlotte. They have a few. They have a few down the years, a few ones that they messed up on, and like you said, like when you're going as a top pick, you have either got to be like the greatest defender who ever lived, or you have to be like a two way, at least some sort of two-way ability. Anyway, he was definitely one that yeah, the Hornets. I don't know what they were thinking when they made that pick. I'll go for another number 1 overall pick. One slightly forgotten. It's because he was in a pretty weak class, but Toronto Raptors 2006, the number 1 overall pick, Andrea Bargnani.
Oh,
He he had a somewhat okay career, but when you're the number 1 pick, they drafted him number 1. He was meant to be a guy that kind of changes the franchise, kind of puts them into a better position, and that's not really something that he ever really did in Toronto.
I forgot about that. I mean, right after that too is LaMarcus Aldridge.
Mm-hmm.
That same draft, Brandon Roy. But that one was a pretty trash top 10. I mean, the next best would be Rudy Gay. Uh, and then oh man, that was the fateful draft that should have been LaMarcus Aldridge going to the Bulls, but it's like Tyus Thomas.
Yeah, that's the only thing that saves Andrea a bit is just that it was a pretty weak class, but he's still the number 1 overall pick, and he still did not have the impact that he should have, and that I think Toronto were expecting.
I'm gonna give you a guy that is pretty ironic for me personally because this is a guy I was really high on, and this is a guy actually, when it was 2017, I was excited that the Celtics might pick him. I was really pushing it. The Celtics should pick him. He's a great player. He's going to be a really, really electric two-way wing. Got a ton of skills in the open court. Could definitely get it going at defense. He could be an all-defensive player. Josh Jackson.
Yeah.
I'm giving you Josh Jackson. A guy, man, just like all the talent in the world and just could not figure it out. And we won't go over all his escapades, but a guy who's disappointed me as a fan of him time and time again, no matter where he went. And good luck with him on your team.
Yeah, we won't get into it all, but yeah, you're right. That guy is definitely someone that he showed the flashes, he showed the potential, and he just never did anything to really pull through on it. And that's unfortunately the case for a lot of these. And to finish out your team, one of the more prominent flops of the early 2000s, Kwame Brown, the number 1
Kwame Brown, no, how did I forget Kwame Brown?
The first high schooler to go number 1. He was going to be the guy. He was going to be the next great thing. He ended up averaging 6.6 points and 5.5 boards for his career, and was nothing of what was expected when he went number 1 overall.
Yeah. I can't believe I forgot Kwame. How did I forget Kwame? All right, I pretty much lost that. Um, I don't know if I can beat that now. Actually, no, I'm gonna beat that. I'm gonna give you another 2008 player. 2008 player drafted before Harden and Curry. So Johnny Flynn is his fellow 2008 boy. A lot of busts in 2008 compared to guys that should have been drafted. Number 2 to the Grizzlies. I'm giving you Hashim Thabit.
Yes.
Hashim Thabit. I'm leaving you with a guy who I won't even those averages. I'm surprised they even reached single digits. But this is every time this stresses me out when teams be taking big men without skills, and I think that's really changed. Like teams are taking like interesting projects these days, and guys who just have traditional big man skills are often taken much later. But that, I mean, made no sense at the time. It still makes no sense now. But you got Johnny Flynn, Josh Jackson, MKG, Darko Milicic, and at your 5, Hashim Thabit. Who has the worst team here?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what way really to look at this now.
My team's all in IR. You gave me guys who can't even
they're exactly. You got a bunch of guys who can't even get on the floor. So
gonna be 5 on 3.
It's gonna win, so it's cool. Yeah. So I'll take the. I think I gotta take the W on this one. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you gotta think of that. I did not think about that.
I think I've come back on you. The Kwame Brown one definitely drove it home. That was one. Yeah, that was one you slipped on and you forgot about.
Dude, poor Kwame Brown. Like, I feel like he's always, every year, there's always like 1 month of the year where just him being a bust resurfaces and like he just gets harassed by the internet and he just can't live a normal life. I remember he was on a podcast. He's like, you try to average 6 points, 5 boards in the NBA. I'm like, okay.
I mean, if I'm going to get that contract and then trying to, they want to give me the opportunity to do it, I'd be more than happy to try.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an easy way to go. But yes, I'm taking back the win. We got. We'll let you have the win from last week. I'll take the win this week. It's we're very evenly matched. We're gonna go. I think we're gonna go back and forth, and hopefully next draft. We don't know what it's gonna be yet, but I will make sure we both do our homework and it'll be another good battle. But to finish off, have you got anything for a bit of would you rather? I think I just have a couple of them for you today.
I'll let you shoot this week.
Okay. One that, I don't know, maybe you'll have a quick answer for it, but thinking now the situations that the both players are in, at this moment, who would you rather build your franchise around, build your team around? Zion Williamson or Ja Morant?
What? Are there any stipulations to this? Is this like current, like right now?
At this very moment, say you're about to start a team and your choices there, you can either build around Zion, who's injured all the time, or you can build around Ja, who is flashing guns, getting suspended, looking like he may not be on the greatest track. Which side of the coin are you going with?
Okay, can I choose what city I'm in? Because I think if I get Zion to I don't know, to Portland, there's a lot of organic, healthy food in Portland, a lot better lifestyle choices. I think I'm pretty good. But also, if I get Ja to Cleveland, where there's nothing to do, and he can't even get in trouble because there's nothing to do out there, then I don't know. It depends on the city. I think Ja will get his act together before Zion gets his body together, unfortunately, because one is genetics and one is just like some unfortunate life choices. And I still believe in Ja as a person, as a man. I think he's still young. And I just logically have to believe in that more than I believe in Zion's unbelievable, like freakish athlete body not continuing to break down, which sucks to say, but I think I'm still confident taking Ja.
Yeah, okay. I think that's that's probably fair. I probably would go the same way, as much as it'd be a tough decision for me because I'm pretty hard out on the two of them at this very moment. But one more. We probably kind of answered it before. I think I know what way you're gonna go with this, but keep it simple. Would you rather be a bench player on a title team or the superstar of a loser? Think about being
How many minutes am I getting? What do you mean by bench? Am I in the rotation?
Let's look at
Am
it
I
this way.
in the rotation?
You're like the Udonis Haslam of the
Oh
Miami Heat,
no.
or you're like
Superstar
of a team that's never going to win a title. You're going superstar.
What if I'm like, what if I'm all right, not Udonis Haslam, bro. If you give me what a bench player. Can I be Derek White? Or is that too much?
Nah, Derek White, that's too much. Come on, man.
That's too much. Can I be like Andre Iguodala is too much. So I gotta be Udonis Haslam.
Mm-hmm. All you gotta
I
do
gotta
is
be Udonis Haslam.
and you get a ring.
How many championships am I winning?
2.
2? Superstar. What level superstar are we talking? Like, am I getting the Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Am I a Hall of Fame player?
People are maybe questioning it because you didn't win, but at the same time, you were up there. You're there like top 5 voting of MVP every year. That sort of buzz. But
Every year, bro. Okay, you know what? Although I am a winner, I gotta, I gotta stick with a superstar, man. I'm not being Udonis Haslam. Udonis Haslam.
Who wants to be Udonis
me?
Haslam? Udonis Haslam didn't even want to be Udonis Haslam anymore.
Dude, he has a great though. He's a coach. He's a coach being paid and he doesn't have to actually coach. He's just quote unquote leader. I'm sure
he's good now. Maybe I'm sure he's probably getting on the coaching staff in Miami. Is he now that he's not technically on the on the roster anymore? I don't even know if that's the way it's going. I'm sure it is, and that power to him. Hopefully he can have some success there. He's basically been doing it for the last like 10 years, but sure, whatever. I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Interesting to continue our series about the likes of the teams that got those questions answered ahead of the new year. There's still a couple of teams we're going to be looking at over the next few pods. I love talking to Larry Bird and anyone who's listening, any of our older fans. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember thinking back on those days. And for anyone who doesn't know about Larry Bird, hasn't watched enough of him, go onto YouTube, watch his highlights. This guy was a menace and one of the greats of all time. I took the crown back in the draft, and Chris would rather be a superstar than Udonis Haslam. Probably fair, but my thanks to Chris for joining me. Thank you all so much for listening, and remember, take every shot and love every moment.
Peace.